The output that someone produces is no longer a great determiner of their impact. It's shifting from the individual to the whole. It's shifting from what did this person specifically do to what did this person enable our company to do.
You're listening to HR Superstars, a podcast brought to you by 15Five. On this show, we talk to strategic people leaders who are making a meaningful impact in their organizations and shaping the future of work. So get ready to be inspired and discover the secrets behind building high-performing teams and fostering a culture of growth and thriving. The future of HR starts here.
There's a little bit of backwards thinking that needs to be unwound, because oftentimes a CEO will come to an HR leader and say, I can't stand that our managers do this. We have a problem. It must be our managers. Go do a manager training. Spend an hour with managers on prioritization, on strategic thinking, on feedback, and that will solve whatever this problem is. And one of my favorite things to do over my career as a leader has just been to be like, well, let's walk backwards from the problem. Do you think our leaders struggle to give feedback, struggle to prioritize? Great. How would they know how to prioritize now? Well, don't they just figure it out? Don't they know what our strategy is? Okay, well, where is it? Show me where it is. Well, we talked about it at a company all hands 3 months ago. Great. Where would they find it in any given moment? What if they weren't there? What if they were there, but they were busy? They were distracted. They need to hear it more than once. And to really help leaders in some ways pull that problem back to themselves and to see that everything we're trying to do in an organization, just as what you're talking about, Chris, comes back to the top level leader. If they are not a representation of the frequency, the culture, the strategy, everything that you want to do in a business, it will just fail. People will leave. It's going to kind of start and stop. It'll never fully stick. This is an opportunity to spend time with your executive, to have these conversations about what you're talking about, Chris, about this evolution, and to really focus on them and their development first. Are they ready to be that kind of leader for this next phase of work?
One little mindset shift, because I used to think about this as a leader too. If somebody left, then we must have done something wrong, right? Or what could we have done better so that they stayed? But I don't look at it that way anymore. It's almost like people leaving is a natural byproduct of us filtering through the talent. But when we think about from a leadership and a leader standpoint and just business overall, my last business, we consulted with over 500 companies ranging from, seed and Series A all the way to Fortune 500 and a ton of, middle market companies. The consistent pattern that I saw, and I still see to this day, is that companies focus on patching the symptoms. It was mostly that I saw this in marketing and sales, patching the symptoms rather than really understanding what is the root cause of this. Right. And getting to the fundamental level. And when you get to the fundamental level, a lot of things get way more simple. For instance, right, in marketing, we hear a bunch of people talk about the idea that, if we just need to be better at internal marketing, and that'll make the organization think that marketing is valuable. Right. So we just need to sit up in our all hands and talk about what we did and why for 30 minutes. And all of a sudden the sentiment around marketing will change. It's just not like that. The culture drives a specific metric in the company. It drives a specific thing that's valued. No matter how much we talk about this in a deck at the board meeting, at a fundamental level, the metrics and culture of our organization prevent us from doing customer-focused activities in marketing. It's like, okay, that makes it way more simple to understand, right? And so I find that it's just like, we'll present at the all hands. We'll buy this new technology tool. We'll say we'll get this consultant and do account-based marketing. And all these symptom level things instead of looking deeply at the root of what is the actual cause of this issue. And when I realized it was like this massive light bulb. Everything is a culture and mindset challenge at the leadership and board level. And it just shows up as symptoms in our individual contributors and our middle managers.
Well, and this comes back to what you've been saying this whole time, that if we believe that right now the quality of the human, if a human in our organization is the most important thing, the most strategic advantage we can have right now, then you actually have to spend time on what kind of quality person you are. You don't need to spend time taking another training, going to another this or that. You actually just need to take a moment and reflect, what am I bringing? What am I carrying to the organization? When people interact with me, what do they feel? What do they sense? What's kind of the unwritten things or unspoken things that they are taking away from my interactions? That kind of work and development feels like it's going to be such an incredible value add right now in a way that people didn't recognize before. And it just didn't match, right? To your point, where the value is being derived from. But if value is being derived from humans, we got to put the work in.
I don't want to go too deep into the science and stuff like that because it would be a big tangent, but I do think it's important to recognize the method of how this training works. And so historically, the training has been a facilitator, whether it's a video or a book or event. A facilitator is giving me information that I'm storing in my brain, right? And then eventually I'll figure out how to apply that, but most likely I'll just forget it and not use it very much. But it's not changing who I am, right? Having something in my brain doesn't actually change how I operate automatically. So the shift from just learning something shifts to focusing on training the neural pathways in our mind that happen automatically before we think. And this is, I don't want to get deep into the neuroscience, but this is how it works, is that our brain runs these automatic programs that interpret things as this is scary, right? Those types of things drive the state of our nervous system and determine whether we think clearly or we don't, whether we trust ourselves or we don't, whether we're creative that day or we're not. And so to focus on that element, which is much more like training our bicep, like training ourselves to interpret and see the world differently and see ourselves differently, it's much more like fitness training than it is going to a class or reading a book. And I think that distinction is important because there's a big difference between going to an emotional intelligence course, watching 6 videos on the internet, right? Versus training yourself to think differently about how you engage with people, showing up in a different way automatically, right? So as an example, right, personal story, for my full life up until 3 years ago, people would tell me, Chris, you're just not an empathetic person. You're very right-brained. You think in the science stuff. I can tell that you just don't get me. You're just not empathetic. My senior leaders would tell me that. Other people would tell me that. They would give me that feedback. And at that time, they were right. They were right that I was not showing up in an empathetic way. However, that didn't mean that I'm not an empathetic person. It just meant that I wasn't showing up that way right now. I hadn't trained that capacity in myself. And now 3 years later, a majority of people that meet me reflect that I'm one of the most empathetic people they ever met. They can trust me almost immediately. They can share stuff with me. And it's because I have shifted how I show up automatically. Like it's actually in my nervous system that produces the effect that people feel safe around me. The reason I say that is, one, whether you're empathetic or not is not a personality trait. It's a trained capacity. And historically, these skills or capacities have been viewed as personality traits, right? Susie's not creative, but this person is. So we'll put Susie over there in finance because she's not creative, or this person just isn't empathetic, or this person just isn't, whatever, right? Actually, almost none of these things are actually personality traits. They are just whether or not we have developed and expressed this capacity that we have. So I think that's super empowering to everybody.
Yes.
To experience that in myself, from being totally not creative and totally viewed as not empathetic to now almost the exact opposite of that, super creative, super empathetic within a 3-year period of time, is just hopefully a empowering thing for people to hear that they can do it, and everyone in their organization can too, right? You've got a sales leader that's not showing up in an empathetic way, right? It's maybe they don't care and they're not going to change, right? That's possible too. But you see that as this person has the capacity to do it. I see that they have the potential to do it. Whether they want to do it or not is up to them. But instead of writing it off that no, this person just will never be able to do it, I think that can change how we view our talent too.
Oh, completely. Well, that's actually a really important role that HR can and should play right now, right? Is this the person who can see the potential in everyone? Because oftentimes we are the leaders that CEOs, other executives are coming to say, hey, this is my strategy. What should I do? What do you think about this person? What do you know about their performance? We can play either a very important role in the good way or a bad way and saying, well, no, don't tap this leader because they really struggle as a manager. To your point, they have no empathy. They're never going to be able to lead that cultural project. No way. Go get this person who we know everybody likes and adores. It's well, we should be really leaning into this moment as a way to invite people to show up of, hey, the skills I actually see in this leader are this. Before we put them in this seat and set them up for failure, here's what we need to do. Here's how we could lead them. What a great example they could be to show their journey in developing that. And as you're telling your personal story, it just makes me think, I mean, I grew up with a mom and a sister who are both incredible artists, like drawing, painting, all of that. I mean, just they're great at it. And I am a stick figure person. That's like my where I land. And I always grew up saying, like, I'm not artistic. It's not me. It's the rest of my family. That's totally not a skill that I have. I bring other skills to the table. And it wasn't until much later in my life where a friend of mine told me, they're like, you are artistic. Like, look, you're a great cook. Like, that's art. Like, you can do that without a recipe. You're great at this other thing. And I remember being like, oh, you're right. I am. And like, even just that little shift for me on a personal level just opened up my creativity of like, I can do these other things. Maybe I can't create a pencil dot drawing like my sister can, but that's okay because I have a different artistic skill set that's hiding in there. And so I encourage people listening to this to think about that own moment in their life or a moment they're waiting for someone to say, you are this, you actually have the capacity for this, and to be invited in there.
And even more empowering to not need someone else to tell you, for you to decide for yourself. Right. Yeah. So I think that that can be really big, because a couple of times I needed someone to tell me. And then I realized the number one thing that determines whether I am something or I'm not is just whether or not I believe that about myself.
Exactly. Chris, let's talk a little bit about everything that you're sharing, but in the lens of performance and recruiting, because I know that's an area that you're really passionate about. So tell me about how all of this connects to employee performance, because that is one of the things that most organizations today are thinking about. How do I measure the ROI of my people, the ROI of my artificial intelligence, my agents, my bots? What do you think people are missing right now?
Related to performance management, right? And, human capital management, historically, people have leaned to focus on the individual output of a person. So think about the stereotypical sales guy, right? He's bringing in $1 million a quarter. It doesn't matter that he makes everyone else on the team feel like garbage and doesn't empower anybody. We'll sweep it under the rug and let it slide, right? And it can show up in a variety of positions, which is very stereotypical in like the sales leader or individual contributor. And so in any role, it's been focused on, okay, so what does this person do? What output did they produce? So, we would measure the marketing manager on, did they make 10 blogs, right? That is not an effective measure of performance anymore. You could feasibly make 1,000 blogs in 45 minutes with Claude and a couple of tools. So it's like the output that someone produces is no longer a great determiner of their impact. The shift here, and it's going to be difficult for organizations to adapt to this, but it's shifting from the individual to the whole. It's shifting from what did this person specifically do to more to what did this person enable our company to do? What did this person enable everybody to do, right? And when we think about this in a team meeting, it's like somebody that maybe isn't the best producer, but helps get everybody else to be more creative, to make better decisions, to think more clearly. That person is actually the most valuable person in the room. Every metric measured historically in performance, they would be viewed as the least valuable. But it's the people that are able to expand the capacity of everybody around them and to increase the output of the whole team, of the whole company. It creates a much different qualitative measure of performance and impact that people have been, used to. So I see that shift from individual to more of the impact they have on the whole performance of the company or the team and everyone around them. So I think that one becomes huge. And I would say that the people's ability to develop these skills help people see more clearly, to make decisions for themselves, to come up with new ideas, to produce the things that are actually valuable today, and to encourage and incentivize that, I think is really interesting. Because when you think about somebody coming up with, here are 20 creative ways that we could innovate our product. Here are 20 different totally left field ideas about how we could fundamentally shift how we do marketing, right? Most of the time, those are actually not that valued. It's like, cool, thanks for coming up with the ideas, but we're just going to run the playbook we have for the past 20 years. That actually coming up with those new ideas and pushing the boundaries now is super valuable. And so I think it's changing what we value in an individual and changing what we value in what that individual brings to the whole company. And it must shift from people primarily caring about individual output.
I'm really curious how that shift will impact HR business partners in particular, because so often HR BPs or people business partners, whatever your organization calls them, are treated as just like the triage. I need to put somebody on a PIP. I got to fire someone. I have an urgent situation, come in. But even if we think about those as almost like frequency enablers, to kind of borrow some of like your language, but how are those people working with different teams and functions and being in the trenches to get some of that qualitative read on? Actually, I think there's a deeper problem on why this team is stalled, why they can't move forward, why we're facing so much friction or conflict. Like, how can I help identify that and give them the tools, give them some of that empowerment to unlock it through their unique capabilities, whether it's clarity or decision making or creativity? That like actually just gets even like my wheels turning of all these different areas where HR has such a different role to play if we choose it and if we really step into it.
You could view it as like, I remember going to like a personal development offsite or something, and there was a facilitator there. And that facilitator was responsible for helping us get better ideas, understand each other more, and things like that. That I could see that role being more like that. We did a consulting project with $100 million company where we analyzed the past 9 executive meetings, the transcripts and the stuff from it. And we analyzed it and we found these patterns. When they go to certain metrics, then people start blaming each other and they feel like they're in a rush and they talk about how they're falling behind and it's not solution oriented. And there was just a very clear pattern in the executive meetings that it was not creating, it was problem solving and defending. And that you can find that with all the transcripts that exist, you can find the patterns that are happening. And then for the leader to be intentional about shifting the tone of that meeting, right? 1, to value it as important. 2, to make the shifts within themselves, to show up differently, to be aware of it, that someone in HR has everything they need to be able to do that right now. Analyze the mid-level marketing weekly meeting and literally just look at the transcript and see what's happening, right? Is one person dominating the meeting? What are they talking about? Is everything about how they're falling behind, right? You can see it in the Slack channels. Like, I don't know how much privacy, and I don't want to get into that right now, but to be able to identify, okay, there's these things going on in these meetings or in these Slack channels that are preventing people from being creative, from preventing people from making clear decisions. Let's work with the leader of that team. Let's work with the managers. Maybe it even starts higher in the organization, if you think about it at first principles, to be able to make this stuff happen better and to identify bad apples. I think that the ability to care about what I'll call frequency, people will call it culture, they're different, but for sake of argument, to care about the culture of the company is mostly about getting rid of people that decline it for everybody around them. And so to be a lot more intentional around that process, I think is also something that's pretty interesting and evolving.
Employee engagement is the ultimate driver of your organization's performance. So it's one thing to measure it, but 15Five's performance management platform helps you maximize engagement with easy, customized surveys that transform your data into guided actions with clear results. Learn more at 15five.com or click the link in the show notes.
What would you say are the main challenges that companies have with recruiting today?
I mean, one, fraudulent candidates. that I think is the top one. I think the other one is I don't think companies know exactly what to hire for in this moment. There is so much of that artificial urgency and anxiety that it's just like, well, we got to get people who know AI, who love AI, who are here for the next state of work, who want this thing. They have a lot of phrases, catchphrases they want to hire for, but don't know how to turn that into behaviors and skills that you really recruit for.
Let's talk about this at a couple of different levels, right? So the first level is, what is the primary filtering mechanism that people use to even decide who they're going to interview? It's called a resume or a LinkedIn profile, which is a digital resume. What does a resume signify? A resume signifies the certifications and the experience and titles that people hold, which is a credential of the information or experience that they have. Now that all of those things signal information that is no longer as scarce as they used to be, I would argue that just the value of a resume and using that as the primary filter of deciding who we're going to interview and who we aren't is just not an effective way to decide. It's like, it's just not that important how smart you are anymore. What matters is who you are. How do you show up when things are hard? How do you impact everybody else around you on the team? And like, those are the things that are the most important today. None of those things get decided on a resume, and you can't filter in that way anymore. So I would argue that just a resume is a terrible and ineffective way to filter as a primary method. We put out a job, right? We advertise it on LinkedIn. We get 1,000 resumes, whether we human filter it, but probably AI filter it. We filter it down by colleges, job title, experience. Automatically, we get to 10 candidates. And then we do this systematic interview to say who has the most closely matched previous experience to the job that we have right now, right? And for all of us that have been in a job before, it's like even 3 months into the job description changes if the company's doing the right things. That the person that comes into the company will be able to say, these 7 things that were in the job description don't matter. These are the things that matter most. And they can actually drive where they're going in the organization. That's what we want. We want independent thinker and not somebody that's just going to do whatever they've been told.
Yeah.
And so the filtering process has used to been on what experience do you have and what do you know, that the primary filtering of the talent should be number 1. Does this person operate at a high frequency? Do they positively impact others? Do they act empowered? Do they express these skills that we need that are the most valuable? And number 2, are they aligned with the mission of the organization? Is it like, I'm so passionate about this, I have to do it? That's not how we've hired before. We've hired for skills and experience and people that think that they want to make the most money there, right? So it's shifting. What are the things that we're actually looking for now? And in all of my hiring, the pattern that I've seen, right, I've probably hired and managed 200 people in my career so far. And the people that were aligned to the mission and that were operating in that way were by far the biggest winners. And ironically, they were not the highest paid people. And that generally the highest paid, most experienced people were the places where I had the least hiring success.
Do you think that's going to flip how compensation is in the future? That these people who come in, who meet the frequency and the passion for the mission, are going to be the most valuable in terms of what they're rewarded with?
There's a lot of social inertia related to compensation. So I don't have a clear perspective on how that's going to shift at this point. But to back on the recruiting, so first off is the filtering mechanisms and what we're actually looking for. The second thing is the overall process of recruit to hire. And that I think if a lot of people look deeply, what you would really see is that you really have no idea who somebody is and how they show up when things are hard and how they interact with everybody else through the interview process that you do. That you don't actually see that until you experience that person over a sustained period of time, say 2, 3 months, maybe 6, right? That you don't actually get a full sense of that person's capabilities and the things that actually matter, their frequency, until you have that level of ongoing experience with them. And so I would encourage people to consider that the recruit to hire process is ineffective and has a lot of flaws in it. And it ends up with you hiring people that you haven't fully experienced, and then 2 months in, you realize they're the wrong fit, but you let them hang around for 6 more months. Then you put them on a PIP, and then, it takes you 12 months to get rid of someone that you thought you should have been gone in 2 months. And you might not even know how to properly compensate them at the beginning. And then we have this thing where we don't change someone's compensation for X amount of time or whatever. What if we had more of like I don't know what the right term is, but it's like introducing someone into the organization in a more methodical way? Do they come on as even if they're full-time, it's more like a contractor for the first 3 to 6 months. And they're getting to experience the organization. We're getting to experience them. And I've been doing that with my company. And it's great because, it's honestly 50% of the people come on for 2 or 3 months and we decide, hey, we're not the right fit for you and you're not the right fit for us. And so it's easy to say, okay, contractor, we're just going to end this arrangement. And then some other people just are so impressive and they have so much capability that we would have never tied into an interview process. And then we're like, okay, well, we actually think that you could do an even greater job. Like, here's what your role is going to be. That's going to come with a different compensation package. And here's how we're going to do it. And then you figure it out after working with them for a little while. So I think that's a really interesting trend that just a fundamental flaw that I see in the existing hiring process today. And then you get into, performance management and compensation. And so those are things I'll think about more over time.
I love that approach because I think just in general, I think many people would agree that the just recruit to hire hasn't worked for a long time, right? And the goal is just, I got to fill the seat. I need to fill the seat as fast as possible. And we throw in somebody do a cultural interview, somebody ask a question about our values, and let's grade them on it. But that is not the same as really understanding holistically, who is this person that you're bringing in? And if we come back to what you were talking about earlier, saying the job of the organization is to create the conditions for people to feel safe so that they can have all these other unlocks. It's very hard to feel safe in an interview, right? Like you are meeting someone for 30, 45 minutes. That window of getting to know them over a Zoom call most of the time is really short. You're trying to portray the very best version of yourself because you know you're going to be judged on that and you're in this giant pool. There's nothing safe about that process. And so if we want to get to this different level of really understanding people, we do have to completely reimagine what recruiting is. What does hiring even really mean in this world, and for what organizations need to be distinct and be successful?
It's like the purpose of the leadership team and the organization is to create an environment where our people thrive. Feeling safe is a prerequisite. It's one of many prerequisites. At the most fundamental level, it's to create an environment where people thrive, where people grow, where people evolve, develop new skills, do things they never thought they could do before. It's like, yes, we need to have people feel safe, right? But it's an intermediate step to where we actually want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, that's just like the doormat, but to really walk through the door is, to your point, be in that place of thriving, right? Where you really are growing and excelling as a person. Chris, we could probably continue this conversation for just hours on end. I am so grateful that you came on to HR Superstars today and shared your expertise. I think as I look back on all of my notes of what you said and everything I'm downloading and digesting, the thing that just sticks out most to me and that I hope our listeners take away is that the quality of your people, of individuals in your organization is so important. And that fundamental belief has been a part of the HR world and of HR experts for so long. This is actually such a beautiful moment to lean into that passion and excitement I know so many HR leaders bring to their companies and actually figure out, how do I create a workforce? How do I enable my CEO, my board, other people in the company to really think about the quality of our people and how that changes our business? So I thank you for inviting our guests into that thought and giving them really practical tips. This has been wonderful, and we'll have to make this happen again.
Can't wait. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Chris.
When it comes to manager effectiveness, where should you focus your time and budget? How can you tell the difference between an effective manager and an ineffective one? And how can you replicate the success of a good manager at scale? If you find yourself asking these questions a lot, you're in luck. We wrote this guide to help you answer those questions and offer practical tips and tools that can help you measure key talent metrics, improve manager effectiveness, and create a continuous learning environment for your managers. We'll drop a link in the show notes for you to check out.